Over the past decade, schools have spent billions of dollars on laptops, software, and other ed tech. And yet, if you're a parent like me, you've been hugely disappointed, although not surprised, by the results of this investment. Today, I'm going to argue that we've made one enormous design mistake, one that's causing schools to miss the greatest opportunity in the history of education. And once you see it, you'll never look at laptops, AI, or the role of the teacher the same way again. Welcome to Guide School, where we explore what school can become in the age of AI. I'm Heather Clayton-Staker, and every week I share what I'm learning as we build guide model schools around the world. What's working, what's failing, and what the future of teaching, learning, and childhood can look like. Let's jump in. Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about the biggest mistake schools make with education technology, or ed tech. Imagine that Henry Ford rolls the first Model T into town. Everyone gathers around because they've never seen anything like it. One person studies it carefully and says, "This thing is incredible. Let's strap it to a horse." So they bolt the engine onto the horse, hitch the horse to the wagon, and then wonder why transportation hasn't changed very much. That's what many schools are doing with education technology. Over the past decade, schools have spent billions of dollars putting ed tech into classrooms. Most districts launched one-to-one initiatives. Parents purchased devices. Technology departments purchased devices. We bought special backpacks so our kids could take laptops back and forth to school. And yet, if you walk into most classrooms today, surprisingly little has changed. The classroom's DNA has stayed the same, meaning that the schedule has remained the same. The teacher's role is not markedly different from what I saw when I was in middle school. Our kids' basic pacing and sequence from one subject to the next at the end of each year have not changed. Students still move from content to content in age-based batches. Everyone is still learning mostly the same thing at the same time, only now there are laptops. We've basically just made life heavier for the horse. You and I see this everywhere, and it's the single biggest reason so much education technology has disappointed people. When people say ed tech doesn't work, I understand why they feel that way. They're completely right. In many schools, the laptop has become little more than a distraction machine, a cheating machine, a YouTube machine, and a Roblox machine. If that's what laptops are doing in your school, I wouldn't want them either. In fact, I'd rather convert the entire school into a Waldorf school. Put the laptops away, learn to bake bread, whittle wood, paint, garden, and build things with our hands. Take actual notes with paper and pencils. That is what parents are saying right now because we're frustrated. But here's the cause and effect error we're making. The problem isn't the laptop. The problem is that we've kept the horse and bolted the engine onto it. The truly exciting thing about laptops, AI, and adaptive software is not that they make the conventional classroom slightly more efficient. The exciting thing is that they make an entirely different model possible. But getting there requires letting go of some assumptions that have been deeply embedded in education for generations. And that's harder than it sounds. One of my most telling examples comes from a mistake I've made myself many, many times. Several years ago, when I first started helping teachers design what we called blended learning for classrooms, meaning blending online learning software like Khan Academy and Dreambox into the school day, I would devote workshops to helping teachers design a complete end-to-end day in the life for their students. They chose from a variety of blended models, but the one I liked best was the flex model, or what I now call the guide model. I asked teachers who wanted to build a flex or guide model to follow a pattern that begins with morning launches, the activity first thing when the whole class comes together to get energized for the day. And then morning launch is followed by independent work, when students use learning apps to master their core academic skills. Independent work is followed by project time in the afternoon, during which students put away their laptops to apply their knowledge in real-world projects and talents. During this time, the teacher or guide holds one-to-one check-ins with their students. I asked teachers to design that basic flow of the day. Then I turned them loose and asked them to build one day of those activities for their students. I asked them to begin by designing the morning launch. The part of the day was supposed to be designed to bring everyone together as a team and help students get energized for the independent work ahead. The morning launch is typically a fun game or an open-ended discussion to help everyone settle in and get focused and ready for the academic part that came afterwards using laptops. But at this point in my workshops, something fascinating happened again and again. Almost every teacher added a mini lesson into that morning launch. Sometimes it was 10 minutes, sometimes a full lesson. The teachers explained that they just wanted to cover the basics before students started their independent learning, or they wanted to make sure everyone understood the content, or they wanted to provide a little bit of direct instruction, just a little bit before students worked independently. That mini lesson sounded reasonable and important to them. But that little mini lesson was breaking the entire model. The moment we gather everyone together to learn the same academic content at the same time, we've suddenly abandoned personalization. We've moved right back toward the conventional classroom model. And what's interesting is that these teachers weren't trying to sabotage the model. They were trying to help kids. The mini lesson was coming from a deeply held belief about how learning works, a belief that most of us inherited through 13 years of schooling and then reinforced through teacher preparation programs. The belief goes something like this. Learning begins when a teacher explains something. I started calling this the instruction fallacy. The instruction fallacy says that instruction is the scarce resource, that learning happens primarily because a knowledgeable adult stands in front of a room and explains concepts clearly. And for most of human history, that was largely true. If you wanted access to expertise, you needed a human expert. If you wanted personalized explanations, you needed a tutor. If you wanted feedback, you needed a teacher. But the truth is that we're living in a very different world now. Today, students can access explanations on demand. They can get immediate feedback. They can receive adaptive practice. They can ask questions. They can review concepts repeatedly. They can move at their own pace. And increasingly, AI can deliver explanations that are tailored to exactly where the student is stuck. The disruption isn't that computers are becoming teachers. The disruption is that instruction is no longer scarce. And once instruction stops being scarce, it changes the role of the adult. That idea became very real for me this year at Zero School here in Indonesia. We just received our mid-year NWEA map results last week. To be honest, I was nervous because as a guide, I had not been standing at the front of the classroom delivering lessons. I wasn't teaching math. I wasn't teaching reading. I wasn't teaching language. I wasn't teaching science. Instead, I was facilitating morning launches. I was helping students set goals. I was giving them their goal trackers. I was helping them use AI-powered learning software. I was encouraging them to use multiple strategies when they got stuck. I was taking them to football matches, snorkeling expeditions, and farm projects. And there are moments throughout the session when I've wondered, am I doing enough? Should I be explaining more? Should I be rescuing them more quickly when they're stuck? Should I just teach them the lesson myself? Those urges creep in because most of us were trained to believe that explaining equals helping. But I'm excited to tell you that last week we got the mid-year test results back. And guess what? As a group, our students learned 3.6 faster than NWEA MAP projected that they would. Think about that for a moment. NWEA's projections are built from data collected from millions of students. And these students, who had spent half the year in a guide model, dramatically outperformed the expected growth trajectory by 3.6 times what was expected. When I saw those numbers, I just sat there staring at them. Because suddenly I realized that many of the moments when I feel like I wasn't doing enough were actually moments when students were learning to do more themselves. The AI-powered learning apps were delivering instruction at more or less exactly the right level. The students were learning how to find answers. They were developing persistence. They were learning how to get unstuck. As a parent, these are also just things I want so much for my own children. So as a parent, it also meant a lot to me, not just as the guide. The students were still being human and having good days and bad days, but for the most part, they were making solid progress each week. And because they weren't trapped inside age-based pacing, they could move faster than a conventional classroom allows. That hugely freed up their time for more interesting activities in the afternoons. I can't unsee what I've seen in Indonesia. Something very significant is happening in education. We've landed at the disruption of teacher-led instruction. And once you see it clearly, it's very difficult to go back to thinking about school the same way. AI is changing the role of the teacher. Here's what comes next. In our new course, From Teacher to Guide, Leading AI-Powered Learning in Classrooms, you'll learn 5 shifts that transform teachers into guides who coach and empower students. This is based on Guide School's model, whose most recent implementation achieved 3.6 times expected academic growth. It's created by leaders in teacher preparation and disruptive innovation, including my partners at Arizona State University and the Clayton Christensen Institute. Register and enroll today at guide.school/ASU. Running a microschool, co-op, or innovative classroom shouldn't mean drowning in apps and software. As a Harvard researcher and school builder, I'm here to suggest a better way. The academic engine that has given me 3.6 times expected student growth in my latest implementation. Join me for free live training to discover how to replace app chaos with one coherent system and simplify life for your teachers or guides. Spots are limited and there's no replay. I'm broadcasting this live from Indonesia. Register now at guide.school/engine. The most valuable educators today aren't delivering content. They're coaching students, building culture, and developing human potential. That's exactly what I teach in Foundational Guide Certification, our upcoming learning retreat in Nashville, Tennessee. You'll learn the systems and mindsets that define exceptional guides, alongside a cohort who will support your growth every step of the way, delicious food, and super fun activities. Cohort sizes are limited. Visit guide.school/foundations to apply. Now, back to our presentation. Before any teachers listening start feeling defensive, let me say something important. I don't think the reason teachers keep reverting back to lectures and mini lessons is that they're change resistant. And I certainly don't think it's because they don't care about kids. Actually, I think it's the opposite. When you've spent 20 years being rewarded for explaining things, stepping back feels irresponsible. Imagine you're a teacher entrusted to teach the standards to 25 students. You care deeply about them. You see a child struggling. You know the answer. You know exactly what they're doing wrong. Every instinct in your body says, go help them. And for most of educational history, helping meant explaining. Helping meant stepping in. It meant directly teaching them yourself. That's what makes this moment in education so emotionally difficult. We're asking teachers to reconsider one of their deepest assumptions about what it means to be helpful. I feel this tension myself. Even after everything I've seen, even after the results we've gotten, I still occasionally watch a student struggle and think, maybe I should just teach this to the whole class. Then something happens that reminds me why equipping my students with tools they can use themselves matters so much. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus is one of the students at Zero School in Indonesia this year. He's in second grade according to age-based grade levels in the United States. Earlier this year, I noticed he was getting stuck on subtraction word problems inside IXL math. Not a little stuck, tears stuck. Every day he seemed frustrated. Every day he was totally discouraged. I thought I knew what the problem was. I assumed the language was getting in the way. I assumed he couldn't understand the word problems in English well enough to solve them. That diagnosis made perfect sense to me. But then I made a move that went against my instincts. Instead of continuing to sit by Marcus and read aloud each math word problem to him in English, I went to the IXL menu and found a cluster of skills that teach basic subtraction itself. Basic subtraction. I'm talking about 4 minus 3 subtraction, the most basic lessons imaginable. It was a risk because Marcus was a bright kid and it was easy to assume he'd already understood basic subtraction. But then I noticed something surprising. Marcus was curious about the basic subtraction tutorials I assigned him. Something inside him was telling him there was a gap. So he spent 3 days reviewing the foundations. He then returned to the subtraction word problems, and within minutes, he was earning perfect SMART scores in IXL. No more tears, no frustration, no confusion, just success. The entire problem disappeared. That moment taught me something important. If I had been functioning as a conventional teacher, I probably would have misdiagnosed the problem. I would have assumed it was an English language issue. I might have pulled him into a small group. I might have explained the word problems again. I might have simplified the language. But Marcus needed something else. He had a basic skill gap to close. He needed to revisit what finding the difference between between two numbers means. And because he had a laptop stocked with the library of tutorials and tools surrounding subtraction, he could act on that insight immediately. Imagine if he had been sitting in a conventional second grade classroom. That little moment never happens. The class keeps moving. Marcus continues feeling confused, and eventually he might start telling himself a story. Maybe he's bad at math. Maybe school isn't for him. Maybe the other kids are smarter. Maybe none of those things were true. But he needed 3 days with foundational subtraction. That's it. None of the other things were true. And that experience points to a paradox that school leaders need to understand. The less time adults spend delivering instruction, the more time they have available for the work that humans are uniquely qualified to do. When I stopped trying to be Marcus's instructor, I had more capacity to be his guide, more capacity to notice, more capacity to encourage, more capacity to ask questions and diagnose, more capacity to help him build confidence, more capacity to help him find just the right path for him. The guide model is more human than the conventional classroom. People always assume the opposite when I tell them that I'm interested in AI in education because it can make the classroom more human. But in fact, it can if done in a certain way. People see students using laptops and conclude that technology is replacing relationships. What I've seen is almost the exact opposite. When software handles instruction, adults are liberated to focus on coaching, mentoring, motivating, relationship building, goal setting, emotional support, character development, and self-governance. The work becomes profoundly human. And if you're listening to this and thinking, this sounds great, but building the academic side sounds overwhelming, you're not alone. That's exactly why we created Core Engine. Core Engine gives students the AI-powered learning apps, student goal trackers, progress systems, and implementation support needed to build a guide model academic block without reinventing everything from scratch. The goal is simple. Make it dramatically easier for schools to help students learn faster, track their own progress, and develop independence. You can learn more at guide.school/engine. So here's the redesign question I would leave you with today. If I walked into your school tomorrow, where are adults currently doing work that AI could do more precisely, patiently, repeatedly, or precisely? And where could those same adults spend more time? Encouraging, mentoring, coaching, challenging, and inspiring, because that's where the future is headed. Laptops, the internet, and AI are not new tools for the old model. They're an invention to redesign the model itself. Most schools will try to use AI to make conventional instruction a little more efficient. Watch, they will. They will try to use AI to improve the existing model, make it more efficient, make it easier for teachers to build lesson plans, make it easier for them to grade papers, make it easier for them to give feedback. It's the old model married with some AI. But a much smaller group of schools, maybe led by among those who are listening to me right now, will use that technology to fundamentally rethink how learning works. My prediction is that the gap between those two approaches will widen every year. The schools that embrace a genuine guide model will produce dramatically better outcomes because they're redesigning around the strengths of both humans and AI. And that's what we'll continue exploring together. Did I mention that in my latest guide model implementation, students hit 3.6 times expected academic growth with time left over for real passion projects and time at the farm? Learn how in From Teacher to Guide from Arizona State University. Registration is $197. Enroll at guide.school/ASU. Ditch the app and edtech chaos. Discover the core academic engine behind my 3.6 times student growth in a free live training. Spots are limited and there's no replay. Register at guide.school/engine. Become the educator you've always wanted to be at our foundational guide retreat in Nashville, Tennessee. Sumptuous food, challenging and fun curriculum, amazing tools, and guidance for you. Cohort sizes are limited. Registration is $3,500 for this elite experience. Visit guide.school/foundations to apply. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the @Guide Schooling YouTube channel to never miss an episode. You can also get my free bi-monthly field notes by signing up for my emails at guide.school/contact. If you like this show, please give it a thumbs up and follow. That small effort helps spread the word about how to improve teaching and learning for the almost 2 billion children who need a better model. My feed is @HStaker and Instagram is @GuideSchooling. Hope to see you next time. Take care.